If you can stop talking for 10 seconds, that would be fantastic. You want to hit the start timer on there? You want to hit? You want to start podcasting, genius?
Hello, welcome to Carnival Personnel Sideshow. This is Jacques, and I am super excited because I'm excited for a few reasons. I'm doing the sideshow without Joe and Biff, so that's just exciting enough. No, just recently, a friend of the podcast, Jenna, author, music historian, one of the most fun, fascinating guests we've had, one of the most fun, fascinating people I get to call my friend, had given me the heads up that a friend of hers has written a book in the music sphere and said, hey, I think this be a really fun person for you to talk to. I looked everything over. I'm like, oh my God, if this person would lower themselves to come on our podcast, that would be great. But I definitely wanted to not fly this plane solo by myself. And it's music. Joe's a comedy guy. It's music, and Biff is a music guy, but it's not about a band like Baby Metal from Japan. It wasn't kind of his thing. So I reached out to another friend of Jenna's, a good friend of mine, a guest on the podcast, another music historian, an encyclopedia of basically everybody who's ever recorded a piece of music from the first recording ever up until about, I think he jumped off maybe 2010. I don't know if I'm being unfair, but up until about 2010, which would be really perfect. So another big hello, Carnival person. Welcome to our friend Mike Ragogna. Mike, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for inviting me to the carnival.
So Mike's background really quickly again. I met Mike. He was head of catalog at Universal Music Group. We were poised to find ways to take every scrap of music video, concert, an appearance by Universal Music Group, artist on the Dinah Shore Show in 1974 and somehow repurpose it on a DVD or Blu-ray. Then Mike went over to Capitol Records where we did the same thing over there. In between, Mike was the first music blogger for the Huffington Post. He's done a lot of stuff. So I reached out to Mike and said, hey, Jenna has open this opportunity. Here's this author. And I don't think I was halfway through with the sentence. Mike had already looked this stuff up and said, yep, I'm 100% in. So shockingly, after I introduced the guest, maybe it's a ghost. I don't know. Never met him in person, her in person. So actually, to the delight of everybody who listens to the podcast, Mike's pretty much going to drive the ship after we get this going. So enough of that. On to the guest. The guest is an esteemed author, a blogger. I spent the last few days going through so many of the posts about so many of my favorite artists that she has done these incredible deep dives into. I'm very excited to talk about her new book, which is titled In Your Mind, The Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono. So please, a big Carnival Personnel welcome for Madeline Bocaro. Did I mess up the name? Did I come close?
Bocaro, it's fine. I took out the I purposely. Bocaro. B-O-C-A-R-O. Yeah.
Madeline, thank you so much. I don't know where to start, but we'll start right at the top with the new book. How did a book about Yoko Ono come together?
Well, unlike most of the world, I admired her most of my life. I found a picture of her when I was 10 years old in a magazine, and it was about her film Bottoms, where it's naked bottoms walking on a treadmill, whatever, close up. And I was like, wow, this adult is doing something kooky. I love this. And I saved the picture, and I saved everything I could find on her ever since then. And within a year from then, I get the Beatles' White Album, and I realized she's with John Lennon. And I'm like, this is great. Now I can find out everything about her every day. So followed them through the news every day, collected articles, music, interviews. And during COVID, my boyfriend told me, here's this software. You can dump all your articles in here and see what you have. And I realized I had like a 500-page book on Yoko. So it took me like 2 more years to compile it and sort it out and make it make sense. And it just came about like that.
Mm.
Mike did so much research. Like literally. I mean, my friend Joe and I have had so many amazing guests on and stuff, and we almost pride ourselves on our ignorance. So Mike, knowing that, literally, I mean, he put together like. He came close to putting together a 500-page dossier on your 500-page book, Madeline. So, Mike, why don't you dive on in?
I had the one thing that was interesting was your being turned on to Yoko at such an early age. Tell me, I mean, earlier than getting into the Beatles, what what was the when you made that connection? Did you, like there's a lot of material. There's a lot of stuff for autobiographical material. There's a lot about now all of a sudden the Beatles are in the mix, so everything gets meshed. Um, how challenging was it to assemble all the information and then distill it to what you learned, over the years and personally felt into a book?
Well, I grew up with it. So it's like organically infused in my soul. Like I know this person as if she's in my family. And I did spend a lot of time with her or later on. So it wasn't hard because I had it all and I pieced it all together. I've been writing articles about her art pieces, about her childhood, which is fascinating, about her ancestry, which, in the beginning of biographies, you're reading these boring ancestries. The grandmother imported cheese to Mexico and the grandfather exported wine to so and so. And, but her ancestry they were the Rockefellers of Japan, and every member was an important person. And she left them all behind because she found them boring. So, her childhood is very, very interesting. And then she meets John Lennon, and it's just a lot of history too. It's about the turbulent 60s, the 70s, the times a lot of people grew up in, and a lot of side notes, a lot of detail. And it's all fascinating. And I'm like, I get bored very easily reading other books. And I just, even though it's 500 pages, if anyone else wrote it, it would have been 2,000 pages. It's just, I crammed it all in. I got to the point, and um, it was just easy for me. And during COVID, over those 2 years, I didn't feel COVID at all because I was ordering groceries and writing every day, and nobody was calling, nobody was bothering me, and it was fantastic.
Does Yoko have any works that she's especially proud of, recording or otherwise?
I think she sees everything as a whole, her art, music, everything. It's her means of expression, her means of catharsis. So she never really favors anything. It's all the same message, you're involved, you participate, you take away, something from it. And she's giving something to you. It's not just on a wall to be admired. There's a message behind everything. Even though it looks simple, sometimes there's a deep message. And it's all about love and peace and healing, mainly about healing.
Yeah. How about her level of boundary breaking and fame? Did she strive for that? Or was she surprised by her place in the art world and avant-garde, music history? Did that just sort of happen? And as you were saying, part of life, everything, art is life, life is art. How, but, there's a certain consciousness that happens about what you're doing, regardless. What was her view of all of that as it was happening?
Well, in a way, this is what I admire about her. She's just in her own head, and all of her work is in your mind. That's the reason the title of the book is In Your Mind, and actually, this Australian artist did this illustration, and I was like, this is it. This has to be the cover.
That's
So,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. So it's all in your mind, and she started in Japan, with her writings and her work, and she was always misunderstood. Nobody got it. And she got some crazy reviews in the press over there, but still she had some following. And then she gets lumped in with the Fluxus people in New York. And she wasn't really like them. They were in a way more sarcastic and more like in your face and and she was more like reaching out and trying to help and heal people, wanting to be part of um, the world. And so she just evolved in her own way. And then she meets John Lennon and gets involved with the fame. And it didn't necessarily help her in any way. It was actually detrimental in a lot of ways. So she never sought fame. She just wanted her messages to get out there. And she just kept plugging along, whether she was not known or whether she was known. And that was her MO.
Madeline, do you think that Yoko Ono and her work would have been explored and appreciated without her intense pop culture exposure, or from her association with and marriage to John Lennon? Like, in other words, do you think it would have elevated it through itself and through her going out into the world without those connections, those associations?
I think it would have, because she was getting covered in the art magazines. And she would have been taken more seriously, if it hadn't been for the John and the Beatles connection and the hatred towards her for things she didn't even do. So I think so. Right now, her exhibitions are traveling all over the world and they're getting millions of visits. And I don't know if it would have been millions, but look at Kusama with her infinity dots. Those are two Japanese women who knew each other. They both came to New York around the same time in the late 50s, early 60s. And now they have, Kusama has museums named after her. She's one of the most lucrative artists in the world. So I think she would have been on an equivalent maybe with Kusama.
Well, does she know how appreciated and admired she is post Lennon? That's
She's starting to realize it's starting to happen. So yeah, she does now, and at least she got that much out of life.
Does she appreciate how much? I mean, there are people now, well, in the last few decades, who have uh, who have credited Yoko as being one of their main influences or a main influence behind their recordings, behind their art, their approach to music.
Mhm.
Do you see, like, well, from your perspective, in your opinion, do you feel like did it creep into the culture? Like you could see it in a lot of the 80s, a lot of 80s material seems to have learned from what Yoko presented in the art world, whether it be through performance art or whether, recordings, etc. But do you feel that there's any kind of uh, contribution in a bigger sense, like not just scattered bands here or there, or works of art, like her place in history beyond Lennon? What is your perspective of that? How,
Her place in history is she was a feminist as well, an activist. She crosses every medium. So, which one will she be remembered in more? Possibly the art, because that's what's circulating in museums right now. But all of those art exhibitions, I mean, you go through these white spaces, pure white, and most of her work is translucent or white, or a lot of like notations on cards, instructions that you read. And it's just a disarming and calming experience. I mean, most people, you go to an impressionist exhibition or, cubist, whatever, and you don't walk out going, wow, that was for me. You're just looking at that and leaving and associating from it. But with hers, it's like it's touching you. So I think the art will last the longest. And
nice.
speaking of the music, yes, a lot of famous artists, starting with maybe the B-52s.
Yep.
David Byrne is a big fan. There are tribute albums to her of all these different bands covering her work. And speaking of her music, my next book
Ooh,
this is going to be cover. It's exclusively about her music, and I'm interviewing loads
oh,
of musicians and icons who worked with her. And it's really fun process, and that's gonna be out within maybe a year or so.
nice. Oh my
So
God. Hey, when I was younger, I was part of the Cashman and West, or the Cash West family, and Robbie Stevens comes from that. And Robbie worked with her on a lot of the remixes and a lot of her work over the years. And I had an interview lined up with him, and he bailed, and it was like
um,
I was like, "What happened?" Uh, and I could never figure it out. But I think it was because he maybe felt like he didn't want to over talk about Yoko, because she has this sort of it's this sort of like, where is that boundary? How much of the tea do you spill? and where do you just stay as an admirer? Do
Mhm.
you find that from your perspective, do you come across, do you feel like that too? Do you feel like, well, you know some stuff, but you can't really reveal it because it's, yeah, in other words, you have a personal relationship with her. So do you feel protective of her in that way? I guess that's the way to say it.
You know, I don't because there's nothing to hide. Most of this stuff is lies. It's unbelievable to me how blatantly people printed lies about her. There was a journalist, a famous journalist, Caroline Coon, and she did an interview with Yoko in 1974. It was beautiful, fantastic interview, and it was unpublished. So I contacted her to see if I could use parts of it. And she said, "Oh, I'm so happy you're going to use this." Yeah, it was. I go, "Well, why wasn't it published?" She said, "It was for Cosmopolitan." And they said, "Oh no, this isn't good. You have to dirty it up and tell how she did this and did that, broke up the Beatles, turned on John to drugs, da 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 da. All these untrue things." And she refused to do it, thank goodness. But most journalists didn't refuse to do it. And they had these horrible headlines about her. And this is still being perpetuated.
Oh, God.
But I found nothing to hide. I mean, one of the reasons I did the book is because she's so magical and so wise and smart. She's like a Zen master almost of the innocence of a child. She's just fascinating. And there's hundreds of quotes in my book from her. So it's like she's telling her own, philosophy and everything. So that's what's so interesting about it.
How did you first meet her?
Well, I was writing letters to her, so we were pen pals. When I was like 13, I guess I was started writing to her. And she really appreciated that I loved her work because back then, it was either hate or tell me about John, get John's autograph for me, or, it was all about John or Beatles. So she totally appreciated it. And then one day, a friend of mine convinced me to go to the Dakota and see her. And this was like in the early 80s, right after John had been killed, and it was awful. But I said, well, I'm only going on her birthday, so she knows I'm there for her and whatever. So we went on her birthday, brought her a present, and she took the present and saw my handwriting and realized it was me, and she went crazy. She's like, "Oh my God, it's you. You have to come to this exhibition I'm having. You have to come to this exhibition of John's artwork. You have to come to this concert." And from then on, I started seeing her and going backstage and really asking her a lot of questions. And it was just wonderful being around her. She was so welcoming and so forthright, forthcoming, and magical, really.
Yeah. Hey, pop culture wasn't very respectful to Yoko during the Beatles years, to put it mildly. Do you think that hurt her feelings? Like how deeply, I'm sure it did. How deeply did it hurt her feelings? Like, did it affect her art? Or did she even, did she reach a point where it was like, you know what, I can't.
Yeah, they got to that point where they couldn't. But yeah, it was things like John would get letters and say, "Be careful, she'll slit your throat in the night." It just really
Ooh.
pulling her hair in the public, and it became pretty awful. But the way she described it was that it was just a lot of jabs like acupuncture, and she has this ability to just turn things around. It was just energy coming at her, and she turned it into positive energy by ignoring a lot of it and just reacting positively, and that's how she did it.
Nice.
Is
There
there?
seems,
Okay,
oh,
Mike. I was going to say, is there? And it must be just so hard to answer a question like this. But is there a piece of artwork that you can say that is my favorite?
There's a lot of them, but actually, to show you the depth of one of them is it's called Painting to be Stepped On, and it's this canvas on the floor. It says to be stepped on. So John actually saw that and said, "Oh, no respect for art." As if, you should just dis art by stepping on it. But what it is in 17th century Japan, Christians were persecuted by having to step on a painting of Christ. And if they wouldn't step on it, they were killed.
ooh.
And most of them wouldn't step on it. And she admired that conviction. And she wanted to have that kind of conviction in her life. She heard the story as a child. And this was the creation of that painting.
Yeah.
That is maybe the deepest, darkest thing ever brought up on the Carnival Personnel Podcast. That is,
I have to ask, I have to follow up. What was the fate of that work of art?
Oh, it's still around. It's in every exhibition now. And one time I was walking with her through, there was a premiere of her one-woman show at Museum of Modern Art in 2015. And I was walking through it behind her, and I was like, oh, here's the painting to be steps on. What's she gonna do? And she just walked around it.
That is fantastic.
And there's another one with a deep meaning. It seems simple. It's a postcard that came with one of her albums, and it's in her exhibitions too. And it's got a hole cut out. It's a white postcard with a hole cut out in the center, and it's called "A Hole to See the Sky Through." And the sky is a big meaning in her life. I mean, everything's about sky and clouds. But, people think, oh, this is cute. I'll look at the sky through this thing. But what it really represents is that when she was growing up in Japan, she was 12 years old when America bombed Tokyo, where she lived. And her parents sent her and her siblings to a dilapidated farmhouse in the countryside. And they were hungry. The people of the town wouldn't give them food. People threw stones at them. They had to eat mulberries off the trees. They saw a family dead in the woods from eating poison mushrooms. It was horrible. And she had to fend for her two little siblings. And they were laying on the floor in the barn. There was a hole in the roof. And that's where she could see the sky. And she said, wow, as long as I can see the sky, I know everything's going to be okay.
Wow. Well,
that's pretty amazing. And so her son is also an artist. What's her relationship with her son's artwork?
He can draw very well, but he's mostly a musician, and he was her band director for years. He's in her band with his friends from Japan, from America and Japan. And they did her Rising tour with her in 1996, the album and the tour. He reorganized the Plastic Ono band for her birthday concerts in 2010. And he's basically, thank God for him, because he's like John in her life. He's her biggest fan. He supports her completely. He loves my book. He supports me completely.
That is fantastic.
So yeah, he's just totally into it. So thank goodness for Sean. And he has a new album out, by the way, with the Claypool Lennon Delirium. Put out the single video the other day. It's fantastic.
What are you going to be going on a book tour? What can we expect to see with you in the book over the next year?
Well, over the next year, I'm not sure. I've done a lot of library talks. I've done, over about 100 podcasts. I mean, this has been like 2 years now, and it just came out in ebook form. So now it's available worldwide without having to pay crazy shipping charges.
Nice.
And yeah, just doing what I can, every day on social media to promote it. And
your next book, you are hoping to be out in 2027.
Yeah.
Can we talk about your blog?
Sure.
Okay. So some of the blogs that I really, really loved, because I am just probably one of the biggest Velvet Underground fans ever. Velvet stuff, your Andy Warhol stuff. Also, and I was telling Mike before this, my wife and I do special need dog rescue, and by my wife and I, she does it, and to soften me up every time we have a new I don't know how to describe some of these dogs. Like, we have a 3-legged pit bull. We have this deaf dog. We have a blind dog. But she'll name them after like rock stars I like or superhero characters to soften me up. And the last one we got, this tiny 6-pound cartoon bug-eyed little Boston Terrier, she named him Iggy Pup because Iggy Pup is one of my favorite. Like, you could see every rib on this dog when we got it. So she's
Did
like,
she play I Want to Be Your Dog when she brought him home?
Which is arguably one of the most fun songs for me to play on the drums. But so I absolutely wanted to add, so you had this iconic, just scrolling back through the years of your blog post. I come across one of the pictures. It's one of my favorite rock pictures ever. It's David Bowie. It's Lou Reed, and sandwiched between them is Iggy. And one of my favorite rock documentaries ever is called like The Perfect Triangle, about how the three of them truly had this symbiotic, one made the other famous for working on the other, and it just kind of went around and around all through the 70s, into the 80s. Bowie.
Yeah, my story about it is the mental capacity of the three of them and how they were kind of similar.
It's all geniuses, just absolute, and then the Warhol thing. How did you get started in being a music blogger to begin with?
I was a kid that wanted to go to some concerts where I wasn't old enough to attend. And then finally, when I was 13, I had one friend who would go with me to some of these things. But our parents would have to either escort us or we'd have to be home right after. But most of the time they would find us backstage because we were kids and we would just run, we'd just go for it. But yeah, I got to see a lot of these bands, Sparks, Queen, Mott the Hoople, Iggy Pop, literally 100 times. I mean, people I loved. I had to see them over and over. The New York Dolls, the Sex Pistols, and whatever. And I would just go and go, and I would come home and write in a notebook the set list and everything they did and what they wore and how much I enjoyed it. And I had all these things, and I said, you know what? Let me write about this show one day, and I would just put that up on my blog, like the New York Dolls concert on Valentine's Day 1974. Holy, what a great thing. And about the time, and it's just, they all became these big stories, and I put them up every couple of days. I put up another one, and that's how it grew. I think I started in 2000, something like that. So over 20 years it's grown, and people are really begging me to put it together in book form. But it's massive, and I have to figure out how to organize it.
Well, it is massive. I mean, one of my favorite ones was your Ride to Nowhere, where you just put together this like quintessential driving and nowhere kind of playlist with just some of my favorite songs like Roadrunner and stuff like that. That was really funny.
Yeah, I do playlists, and they're not just lists of songs; they're themes, playlists, and with fun facts about every song. So.
That was a post. Bowie is, I don't think there's possibly enough positive adjectives to describe my feelings for David Bowie. And I saw so many great Bowie posts that you have. So why don't you tell me or us, like, 3 of your all-time favorite artists and concerts?
Okay, so Iggy Pop. I went to the John Lennon and Yoko Ono concert, the one and only, in 1972. So that was spectacular. Iggy, well, the New York Dolls one was amazing. I mean, Lou Reed, oh my God. Every time I saw Lou Reed, it was crazy and great. So like, I think it was 4 nights, 8 shows at the Bottom Line, like 8 Lou Reed shows. And the Clash at a whole week at Bonds with 2 shows a day, 2 matinees on. Oh God, I was at like 10 of those shows. This is a great time with legends, the Ramones. Oh my God, Blondie, Patti Smith. Like back then, CBGBs every weekend, the Cramps, television, Talking Heads.
If there's a time machine, it's like I
Ian Hunter and Mick Ronson, I went on tour with them. So there was this club on Long Island called My Father's Place. It wasn't my father's place, but it's a famous club. And it was very small, but all the legends came there from like 70, from the 70s all the way up until the mid 80s. And I used to go there at like 4 o'clock and hang out in the parking lot and watch them pull up and do soundtracks. Most of them would invite me in, and I befriended a lot of them. So it was the best time of my life.
I was going to say, like, CBGB's is like, that's probably, in my world, based on the bands that I love and stuff like that, that is like the epicenter where so many of them came out of, or went through there. So super jealous. Mike, were you ever in CBGB's?
Yeah, it was such a toilet, but I loved it.
It was like our cavern club, it's like, here we are. And then when they started becoming popular, we're like, no, they belong to us. Why is this world listening to this now?
Did you guys see the biopic on the CBGBs with Alan Rickman?
I refuse to watch it. I just don't want to taint my memories.
No, it was great. And what I loved best about it, spoiler alert, at the end, as the credits were rolling, I did not know this, but Blondie considered him, the guy who created CBGB's, part of their band.
Oh,
And when they got inducted into the Hall of Fame, he was up there on stage with them.
yeah.
That was it was not a bad movie at all. It was exactly what you said, Mike. It's like, yeah, here was this absolute hole in the wall in the Bowery, but here's all the bands that came through, and here's all the people who couldn't get stage time anywhere else. When you think about the kind of music at the time the Talking Heads were doing,
Mhm.
it didn't fit into any, they were literally the perpetual, square peg in a world of round holes. That's where they got stage time. That's where people found them. And no, it is a really, really good biopic. But as I'm watching it, it's like, I did not know that whole Blondie, connection and stuff like that. And I just thought, wow, that is I'm so super jealous that was a hangout spot for you.
I remember the day I got the Blondie first record and Iggy Pop's Idiot album, 1977, because Iggy was playing at the Palladium. It was called the Academy of Music at the time, and Blondie opened for him. And I was writing for my college newspaper at the time, so I got both of these albums in the mail the same day in the same package from, no, different pack. It was Private Stock and RCA, and I think I got Low and the Idiot at the same time from RCA. What a day! You get these 3 classic albums in the mail. So I was listening to both albums because I was seeing both bands that night. It was like amazing day.
That's a dream come true. Have you? And I want to move on to more of your writing in a sec. Have you ever seen the Henry Rollins spoken word about mating Iggy Pop?
No.
So it is, I'm a fan of Henry Rollins' music, but like some of his spoken word stuff is so good. And I implore you to look up when he got to open for Iggy Pop and the prep work that he tells this amazing story about the 3 times that he got to perform on the same stage for a festival or whatever with Iggy Pop, and how much he will never get over, how much resentment that he has, no matter how good he was, how hard Henry Rollins worked every single time. The work that he went in to own the stage and to blow away Iggy Pop and to take over the crowd, and then Iggy Pop would just get up there and just how much better he ever was. And it's such a great thing. And then he tells this whole story about how there are truly 2 different people. There's Iggy Pop, and then there's
Well, I think Iggy, the reason I love these people, like especially Iggy and Yoko, is they're just really sincere and
Yes.
genuine about what they're doing. And there was one time where I wasn't there because it was in San Francisco, but Iggy joined Yoko on stage once, and they did, one of her songs, and it was just so beautiful. I was like, there are my parents. I wish they'd adopt me, and I'd be Maddie Ono Pop or something, because these 2 are my favorite people in the world.
Well, that's it. It's like Rollins is telling this story. It's like he gets off stage and it was a performance of his life, Rollins' performance of his life. And there's Iggy waiting in the wings. It's like, oh man, that was really good. But it's not Iggy waiting in the wings. It's James Osterberg, talking to him. And he's like, oh, excuse me, now I got to go on.
Yeah.
And then he becomes Iggy Pop, and he's just sitting there, and there's Rollins talking about, I will never not be amazed at what this guy does, like professionally performing. No, Iggy Pop is, it's hard to, he might be, it might be either him or it's either him or Bowie or, you guys, because a generation a little older than me, Liam Gallagher. Like those are my 3 probably famous performers of all time. Now,
Iggy's up there for me. Iggy's up at top with Yoko.
he is now. It's funny because when we were going back and forth, Mike, when Madeline and I were talking back and forth, lining this up, I don't know too many other people who I've come across who know what CMJ was, and I was so so beyond excited that you were part of the CMJ world. Mike, do you know what CMJ is? Okay, you do. All
Yeah,
right.
right, of course.
But most of the people who, yeah.
Can you go into that? Can you go into some of those years? Like, you must have a couple of stories from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, must have been right when I was graduating high school. I was writing for my high school paper and I did some music reviews. And I guess CMJ was it was just starting. It was in the basement of the founder's parents' house. And they were scouting for, I guess, office people and writers, whatever. And this guidance counselor at the school said, "Hey, Madeline, this sounds like something for you." And it was right in my neighborhood. It was like a mile away. And I walked over there and did an interview with Bobby Haber, the founder. And it was great. I worked in the offices. I did concert reviews, record reviews. I was there like 5 years, I guess, or something. And they used to also run the new music seminars, and I worked those. But yeah, college radio stations would report their music charts every week to us. And we had one of the first computers ever. I mean, it was 1979, 78. And we had abbreviations for each band name, whatever, and we'd type them in there. And then the computer would spit out the results and the charts and, calculate who was number one that week, whatever. So that was pretty cool.
I imagine you made a lot of friends during that time period,
Yeah, I
right?
got to interview great bands, and it was free records and always music on all day. It was fantastic.
Do you have a favorite? What is your favorite? We didn't talk about this yet. What is your favorite Yoko album and song?
Oh, wow.
If you have
So
one. If
I
you
don't
have
know, with Yoko, I always tell people I have to pick three if it's going to be songs, because one's a ballad, maybe winter song I love. And
one.
then there's you want to go wild, you get like Don't Worry Kyoko. And then there's just a rocker, which might be, Catman. So I don't know. And I love, for albums, I always pick the double ones because there's more stuff on them. So it's like Fly in Approximately Infinite Universe, and that's 1971 and 1973. So, John was putting out single albums like, Imagine, and she does the double Fly, and he does, the next one, and she does the double AIU. So there was a point where she had more music out than him as a solo artist at the time.
Well, my perspective is she needed the double album in order to express the complete thought from. I mean, maybe it's weird to look at it like that, but I feel like each of those albums, these long albums, were needed. She needed to get from point A to point Z, and
Well, she had so many genres, so she needed to put like one or two from each kind of style. And also, I think it got in her head because George Harrison had a triple album, and she's like, "Wow, this is crazy. I gotta have a double album at least." So.
I didn't realize it was. I thought it was more like she had to do I'm gonna live with my perspective because I love I love the fact that I feel like, as you said, with her art is her heart and life, and I feel like when you listen to an album, a lot of times maybe somebody reads into it more than they should, but I really feel like each of her albums were not just a matter of a bunch of things that she was putting out. I felt like there was a progress, chronologically or not. It just seems like those projects needed to be the length that they were and what they were.
Oh, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Well, Madeline, before we let you go, Mike, do you have because Mike had so many questions. Did we cover everything that you had? Do you have a final question before we let Madeline get on with finishing up next year's book?
Yeah, that's good.
I hope we can get the interview done before then. Okay. What are your thoughts about your book now, since there's been a little distance from its completion and you've had time to digest the experience of writing it? What do you think? What is your review of your book?
My review is that it's not just my review. I got a review from a magazine in Toronto that says this is the Bible of Yoko.
Nice.
And some people call it the Bible of well-being and healing. And it's just, when a movie, is top box office and people come out and they go, "Oh, that sucked," and with this is an obscure book. It's self-published. I've gotten it out there as much as I can. I'm doing pretty well with it. But I need millions of people to read it, not thousands. And I don't know if they ever will know about it, but it is definitely the only book you need on Yoko. All the others are about her artwork exclusively, or they're just rough biographies. But this one, I just wanted to put her soul into a book, and I did think I was able to. I'm the only one who could have done it because I had all the information. I grew with it since literally 1967. I've been following everything she ever did, kept everything in chronological order. So I would vaguely remember a quote about a song or an artwork, whatever, and I go, I know that was Enemy 1974, and I go pull it out. And nobody else could have done this. There's things she told me that only I have the insight. So, and it goes to show, I mean, Sean loves it, her daughter Kyoko loves it, her colleagues, her friends, Dan Richter, who was John and Yoko's assistant for many years, Elliot Mintz, who was their PR guy and close friend. He says it's a masterpiece. I mean, all these people are like raving about it, and I'm like, okay, we'll tell 100 people about it at least, and just get it out there.
Well, the fact that you've been pen pals with her since you've been 13, I mean, you can just like, it is such a passion project, and it's always wonderful when somebody like has that much passion and then gets to almost like live out a dream by taking that lifetime of passion and putting this book out there. So congrats on all of that, but especially the fact that you've got to put this thing together after years and years and years of basically working on it in your head since you've been 13.
Yeah.
Mike, I cannot thank you enough, for making time and jumping on today. Honestly, I wish you started a music podcast, Mike. I would listen to it. Madeline, I wish you would start a music podcast. I would listen to it. Maybe the two of you team up and do it. I'm looking forward to your book coming out next year, Madeline. This was fantastic start to finish. But I think most of all, don't forget.
First of all, retraction is in order. I didn't mean to people to think that you're really pissed.
Let's play.
Why? Don't be pissed.
Let's play.
I was speaking about Sean
Never
Lambert.
Song. Gate to Hell. Play that. Play it.
Doors never close, little head never stops. Naked little no man with the whisper in his balls. Can you see that I'm afraid to ask your name? Kill myself just to prove to you. Now little girl who looks a lot like you. Can you see that I'm afraid to break this shell? Pretty girl,